My name is Rosie Goldsmith, and I run something called the European Literature Network, including lots of other things. I'm a journalist as well. I worked for a very long time at the BBC, and thanks to the BBC, I went to all the countries that these people come from. These people, these four amazing human beings, they are writers. We call them Eurostars. Now, they have nothing to do with train transport or anything like that. They are European stars of literature. So I'd like you to welcome the British author, essayist, translator, critic, Italophile Tim Parks next to me. And next to him, thank you very much. We have the British writer and illustrator Joanna Walsh, but Joanna also writes in French and does lots and lots of other things as well, which we'll talk about. So big hand for Joanna. And then next to Joanna, we have one of my favourite people in the world because he loves red as well, and he also loves. I wore red for him, and he has a red handkerchief. This is Antoine Laurain, who is the most fabulous French novelist. Thank you. And the only person I haven't met until today, but I have met his country many times, is the Romanian diplomat and prize-winning European Union Prize for Literature author. He's called Claudiu Florian. So welcome to Claudiu. When we put on our last Eurostars in April, the end of April, we called it Culture Matters. And this was a rather desperate attempt on my part to try to turn the tide as far as the referendum went. I don't think any of us realised what the outcome would be. We didn't know. We knew it was close. We didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I always felt that there was not enough talk about literature and culture during the referendum debate. And it was mostly about economics, immigration, politics, and look what happened. So that was on the eve of the referendum debate. And what we have now is our first Eurostars after the referendum. We know that what we have in store is Brexit. So I'm going to ask all of you, first of all, because we've sold this event as a Brexit event, so we'll get that out of the way. But Joanna also very kindly put on social media today that we're going to solve the Brexit problem tonight. So, over to you, Joanna. Does it matter that we are leaving the European Union? To literature, to everything, to your life?
I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about, because I'm not a politician, and it's very difficult to kind of know how to start thinking about this, because I don't have all the information about funding, all the information about the kind of networks, the university networks, the arts, the cultural foundation networks that are going to be disturbed by this move if it does happen. So I kind of thought about what happened when Sam Goldwyn, the filmmaker, came over to England to try and persuade the author Bernard Shaw to write movies for him. And after a long dialogue in which they didn't get on at all, Bernard Shaw was said to have said, or perhaps he said, because that would be kind of typical. Mr. Goldwyn, the problem is you're only interested in art. I'm only interested in money. I think as an artist, I do the art. I'm kind of interested in the money. I'm interested in the way it circulates and the way it goes. And I think that the most interesting thing about money and the European Union is not necessarily the way that it circulates in terms of cultural foundations, which is wonderful, in universities and exchanges of authors, but a very, very, very basic thing, which is encroaching more and more on our lives, and we see it more and more in countries that are getting closer and closer to us, and that is money and war. Wars cost money. They cost money in terms of people's time, in terms of people's lives, in terms of all sorts of infrastructures. The European Union, one of the arguments that David Cameron used, and what many people have used against leaving the European Union, is that the European Union has been a significant contributor to 66 years of European peace. And it's very frightening to think what might happen as this closeness or if this closeness falls apart in terms of stability, really, of political stability.
But as a creative, as an artist, I mean, do you think that you can have an impact on European culture? I mean, do you feel that what you do, or do you just do it for yourself?
I work very closely in collaboration with a lot of people, and I like to collaborate with people not just here, but in the EU, and I'm very worried about the free movement of persons and my ability to I'm a writer, I don't earn very much money, my ability to go somewhere, my ability to not have to pay health insurance, to not have to pay for a visa, the difficulty, all the kind of additional paperwork that's involved in that. I have an association with the University of Maynooth in Ireland, for instance, and I'm going to do some work over there. I don't know whether that would become more difficult. I collaborate very frequently with friends in Paris and Berlin and other places. So I personally do feel very influenced by culture from many of the countries in Europe, but
well, we'll continue that debate. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Joanna. But Tim, I'm going to stay sort of. You don't live in the UK, but you are British, or do you have Italian citizenship as well? I mean, you've lived in Italy since 1981.
I don't yet have Italian citizenship. I may ask for it following the various talks. Yeah, I'm not the least bit concerned about the situation. I'm not remotely worried about the situation. I think in terms, if you look, what is the relationship of the European community been with literature? They have no doubt funded a bunch of seminars. There may be, I've certainly never applied.
I mean, the European Union
as an organisation.
None that I know of.
Right. It is not clear to me
they have done
that
yes.
in the last 20 or 30 years there has been any moving towards a closer sense of European culture in Europe. In Italy, where I live, about 70% of the books that are read, the novels that are read, are translated, and of those, about 70% are from the USA. The attention of Italians, as indeed of Europeans in many parts of Europe, is much more towards, say, the American election than even the election in Germany, which in economic terms might be much more important to us. Like, it's not clear to me that the European Union has in any way been a motor for cultural change. I don't believe at all in the ability of large organizations to hand money out knowingly and carefully to writers. I don't want to be funded by the European Union. Partly I say that because I know they never would. I mean, obviously, if they offered me a check, I might...
You're far too critical.
But and I think at the bottom of this, I'm really perplexed when people talk about things like international literature. What does this mean? Literature grows in a context where a writer writes about either a community or situations or people who presumably they have some experience of, because it's very people do also write about I know an Indian writer who set a book in Bulgaria without ever going there, but that is an interesting discussion. But in general, a novel grows in a community and with your own background of reading and thinking. And without it necessarily being consciously addressed to people, it has a natural community of readers. Now, that community of readers today could spread out into other countries. But still today, and partly because for linguistic reasons, one assumes that, for example, a Romanian novel might have more immediate sense to the people in that country. So the question about when you use the word international literature is, are we talking about translations of books that grew up in, say, an Italian environment and that make their fullest sense in that environment, or are we talking about books that were anyway projected into an international space in a sort of move towards, because the zeitgeist is clearly towards being able to share in all countries texts that we all know. But the problem there is that the more we have a text that everybody can share, the less that text can talk to us about, say, Brexit, if you want. I mean, can we imagine? Let's imagine a novel. For example, I heard from a friend yesterday this wonderful little anecdote that very briefly after the Brexit vote, a friend of his who was marrying sent out a WhatsApp message to all 200 people being invited to say that anybody who had voted for Brexit could consider themselves uninvited. Okay. Now that's an extraordinary move to make and indicates the level of intensity and sort of unwise mixing of private and public. One imagines a fact like that in a novel and so on. How much would that mean to an Italian public and so on, and so on? So when we use this expression, international literature,
or even European, I mean that's more
above all European. What do we actually mean? You know, and I don't think that the question of whether Britain is or is not in an actual membership relation in the European Union, obviously, you know, the distance between Calais and Dover is not likely.
Well, let's go to France and hear what France thinks. I mean, France is our closest neighbour. I think you've got. You're fine. You can keep yours. I mean, will you still be our friend when we're cut off, Antoine? So, I mean, how do you and Claudiu now to give us some views from outside the UK? I mean, do you care that the UK is leaving? Does it matter to you?
Yes, of course.
And why?
Because first it was quite a shock for France, because I remember this night everybody thought that it will be the in will be the winner, and then after at the breakfast it was the Brexit, and everybody, the British people have voted out. So
but France has always, in a way, been an island anyway, of its own. So I can imagine that and there's always this slightly false enmity between our two countries, you know, France and false or real.
Yes, because we have the Channel and the Eurostar, so we are quite connected. But I think we are still friends between Europe and UK. But I don't know if it's going to be changed a lot for literature. I'm not sure, because it's not still the Brexit. I mean, you will have your B-Day in 1 year or 1 year and a half or maybe 2 years. So it's difficult to say if if things going to be very, very different.
We just don't know.
Yes.
It's the first time it's been done.
I ask other members, what could possibly change for novels and writing? I thought, what could change?
I think a lot of the practical issues that Joanna mentioned, you know, visas, contracts, publishing rights, copyright.
I was employed by an Italian university long before Maastricht. And I seriously doubt that if they fired me, it would be so wonderful, you know. In a sense, it would make up my mind. But I don't think there's any intention for that to happen. But let's leave aside my personal circumstances. It will probably be a benefit to literature if people like my books, if I was fired, because then I would be forced to write a little more. Already writing too much.
You write far too much.
You know, no, this will make no difference as I see it. You know, and I throw the question out to others. Let's hear what Claudiu thinks. Sorry, I'm using an Italian Claudiu. What could possibly actually change with the UK leaving?
Well, now, Claudiu, I do want to just make this small, short comment before I ask to speak, because if it weren't for, if you like, the European Union, much of what we do as countries together wouldn't be possible. I was part of in 1989, I was part of the BBC group that went to, I was a reporter at Radio 4, and in December, I went to Bucharest and Romania. Sorry about this. And just a couple of days after Ceausescu was executed. And Romania has always been a very special country for me. And then it joined the European Union, possibly a little bit too early. And you have travelled the borders. You come from a border, from Brasov, from Transylvania, which is an area of Romania which has so many borders and so many different nationalities and languages. And you live in Berlin and Germany. Your whole life has been, in recent years, recent decades, has been European. So for you, is the European Union a good thing? How do you feel about it?
Of course it is a good thing. Mainly because, as it was mentioned here before, it managed to keep peace in Europe after for 7 decades, almost 7 decades now. But on the other hand, for joining people and cultures and mentalities in an equalizing way, but in a positive way of saying this. But on the other hand, my God, it the end of the European Union, and it is not the end of Great Britain, this Brexit story, because it's very important and it's a little bit dramatic, I would say. There is an unspoken rule of protocol, perhaps, which says that the one who arrives latest leaves the soonest. From the core of the Western European countries, Great Britain arrived the latest to the European structure, to the European Union at the beginning of the 70s. And it arrived also at that time.
With France and Germany, because France and Germany started off the European, and then Britain.
Exactly,
yes.
That's what I mean.
Britain much later.
Much later. So then it wanted to be part of it, to take part of the decisions and to mix things together with the others. But on the other hand, now by leaving, the Great Britain is not alone at all. It is not accustomed to be alone in history when we see the empire where the sun never sets down. So it is a question of attitude from both sides, because the European Union has to think more concentrated about it and about the reasons which made Great Britain to leave, and Britain should think about how it can do without, at least for the next period of history.
I think what I worry about is the insularity. We have an inbuilt insularity in this country now, I think, and we think that we're special and different, and that's what I worry about, it becoming even worse. And I think we're already bad at language learning, and that's already declining our ability to language. As a linguist, both you and Joanna are linguists. I mean, you must appreciate. I mean, look, we have 4 people here speaking fluent English.
This is what I wanted to say. Excuse me for interrupting you, but the announcement in Brussels that Great Britain is about to leave, I suppose it has been made in English as well. And that means that the English influence and the English culture is and will remain present in Europe as well. And the European Union will not do without Great Britain.
Now, Claudiu, you live in Berlin. You're a diplomat. You just said something very diplomatic. I expect nothing less. But in the sense that you work at the Romanian Cultural Institute in Berlin. So, I mean, you're part of the European culture, if you like. You can see what has happened to Romania since 1989. I mean, surely these are good moves for Romania. I mean, Eastern Europe was so cut off. Romania particularly was very cut off before 1989. Do you think, for you it's been a positive aspect of your life and your work?
a philosophy of thinking and of acting after the 90s. The 90s were unfortunately an almost lost decade in Romanian history because it went downwards before starting to get upwards. At the end of the 90s, in 99, Romania at the summit in Copenhagen was offered the perspective of opening negotiations in order to join the European Union. And then there was a great mobilization in Romania in order to achieve certain standards to join. It was not simple all the time because there were also some sacrifices to do. It is not everything only milk and honey in joining the European Union. And one has to adjust its own economy and to adapt it. On the other hand, it would be interesting, and I speak now as a historian and not at all as a diplomat, I would say. It would be interesting to make a parallel between the European Union on one hand, certain aspects of the European Union's economic politics, for instance, and the economic politics of the Soviet Union in the 50s, 60s, and to see what this distribution of economic spheres and of certain slices of economy and chapters of economy to each country. This was something which not the European Union invented. There was a plan in the Soviet Union at the beginning of the 60s, which was called the Valev plan, which regarded the international distribution of work and of production. This was something which Romania leaned against and began in the 60s its very clear distancing towards the Soviet Union, Soviet politics. And at the end of the 60s and in the 70s, Romania was very Western open, not so isolated as it became in the 80s. It's another historical aspect. But on the other hand, coming back to the European Union story of Romania, it was very mobilizing and very motivating for Romania to try to achieve all the goals set by the acquis communautaire. After that, a little relaxation can be seen, and a little inertia. Yes. It's a positive inertia because during this inertia you have to keep the pace and to cope with the concurrence and with everything that you have to do in this European, let's say, train. But concerning culture, I don't think culture will have to suffer very much from this point of view, except, as you said, perhaps some rules according to copyright or some small technical things. But I think it is intriguing for creators in the cultural field to have such a dramatic event and to deal with it.
It is interesting from a statistical point of view. I mean, the so-called it's called the Creative Industries Federation. We now have a federation, and you are part of the creative industries, which I think is an interesting new term for writers and artists and performers and fashion, but not part of the federation. But they did some surveys before Brexit, before it actually happened, and they maintained from their statistics that 97% of people in the creative industries were in favour of remaining. Now, 97%, they're saying that 97% of artists, writers, whatever, and of course, as we know, in London, 70% of Londoners were in favour of remaining. But this is not just going to be a political debate, okay? I promise that. This is a cultural and literary debate. And I want to, before we get on to talking about your books specifically, I do want to ask Antoine as well. Now, you are, of all the writers here tonight, you are the most localised in your city, in your country. The others write across borders. They have, we've got Italy and Britain and so many influences on Tim's writing. Joanna, French, English, Irish, lots of different borders, Swiss. and Claudiu, we've got the Romanian, German, Transylvanian, English, and you are French, and you're Parisian, and you're very, very proud of that. Does it sound strange to be talking about European literature? You're very proud of being Parisian too, aren't you?
Yes, that's true. My own story is not so much a European story. It's more a French story, because I live in Paris. I'm born in Paris. I'm still living in this city, in the same district. I'm here since sixth generation before me, so I'm a real Parisian. But of course, I'm concerned about Europe, about United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, Germany, because we are all connected. And but we have to remember that United Kingdom had not the euro money. You know, so your place.
We haven't got the euro.
Yes. So your place in Europe, in the European Union, was very, very different. It was apart from the beginning, because we are connected by euro. So this is very interesting, because I think if you had the euro, it would have been very, very difficult to make the Brexit. Mm-hmm. No.
Well, absolutely. It's a very good point. But the fact about your actual writing being so French, I mean, it's interesting because the way that people describe your writing is French. I mean, it's not fair, I don't think, because I don't think it actually does describe your writing. They call it French whimsy, which means, it sounds charming. It's all very Parisian and lovely and sweet and so on too. But it's actually much more than that. But it is interesting. Of everybody here, you're French. That's part of your branding.
Yes, it's in my DNA.
Sixth generation.
I can't do anything.
You can't do anything about it, no.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes you read a book written by an Italian, and you have a special feeling. It's definitely, it can't be written by someone else than an Italian or someone from Spain or from Germany. So it's very individual. It's very sometimes you are a part of your country. It's it's like that. It's not a choice.
Now, Tim Parks is the only author here who's actually written a book called Europa. I remember that was actually how, in Speech I became very interested in you, because I was actually working on a program called Europhile on Radio 4, which obviously showed its colours. But that book was, it was a journey across Europe. That was 20 years ago almost, that book. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. Now, Tim has actually written 17 novels, and you have written, I don't know, as many non-fiction books of essays, and translations as that. So have you ever counted how many books you've written?
It's not a good way to spend the time, isn't it?
But have you ever done that? I'm sure that a part of you is interested.
How many novels have you written, and you're obliged to go and check. So,
I mean, it varies between 14 and 17.
When I consider how many books I've written, I always wonder why I never made a lot of money with any of them. Now, since we've brought up Europa, let me recall the context in which that book was written. The book was a journey by a group of language teachers from an Italian university to present a petition to the European Parliament complaining about the way foreign language teachers were being treated in Italy. It was a trip that I actually made. You couldn't have made it up. There were a group of language teachers, mostly men, who took a coachload of students, mainly women, to Strasbourg. Let's remember that Strasbourg is Europe's second parliament, where for a week every month all the European parliamentarians move all their papers with something like, I believe, 10 or 20 articulated trucks that move all their papers to Strasbourg to, let's not go into why they do that because there's no sense in it at all. But anyway, as the trip was made, it was before the Euro. Let's remember the Euro dates back to 2000 and that the European community was together for a very long time before the Euro. It was the period of the so-called snake. Does anybody remember the joys of the snake? Which was when all our currencies were supposed to float within a few percent of each other. So, you could go up 2% and down 2%, but if you went more than that, then you had to adjust interest rates too. And it was actually, we made the trip in the week when both Britain and Italy dropped out of the snake because of speculations on the market. It was quite clear at that time that Europe could not have been more disunited. And during that trip, we presented a petition to the European Parliament. It was a petition of immense hypocrisy. I was there. I lent my name to it. It was a disgrace. I mean, we pretended all kinds of things that were not true. There were 9 interpreters there to interpret for us, although everybody spoke in English, except maybe 1 or 2 people. The whole thing was beyond farce. And we were greeted by the secretary of one of the Scottish MPs there, who was a major figure at the time, I can't remember. And she said, "Welcome to Europe's biggest brothel." I remember that. And the reason for that was that it seemed that a lot of the MPs, the 8 MPs, when they moved down there,
MEPs who are engaging in various activities. Anyway, so the book was set there, and the book was about disappointment in love and disappointment in politics. Let me say that I would have voted to remain because I hoped in the European ideal, but to all practical purposes, I don't believe a word of it. I live in a country where we have 40% youth unemployment. So after all these years of the European community and fitting in, we have 40% youth unemployment. Spain, I believe, has 45 or something like that. And the situation is frankly, for many young people, desperate. Although, when I was very recently in Italy, I was in Mantua.
The arts is pretty zero. So,
yeah, well, people seem to be feel very European and attached to Europe in Italy, but maybe...
The recent surveys showed more than 30% were willing to consider leaving. That is a huge figure for Italy. About 10 years ago, it would have been 2%.
Joanna, now you do cross borders, as we've been talking about. When you hear that, I mean, you and I are outnumbered, not just by the fact that they were wearing black suits, but you've actually got black jacket too. Suit. Yeah, I know. I mean, this is you shouldn't have done that. You should have, because you look, you're all dressed the same. All the authors are dressed in with black jackets almost. You should have conferred. I'm really disappointed in all of you. But when you hear all this. And do you think it all sounds a bit sort of negative and?
Well, because I'm sitting next to Tim.
No. Well, that's Tim is. It was
a lot of fun.
That was indeed. Yeah.
I wish I were someone who had the data. To be able to say that this investment is going here and this investment is going here, but I'm just not. I think you perhaps are.
Let's talk about literature then too.
I mean, if you want to talk about literary influence, I do. A feeling of Europeanness. It's not something I know whether this would mentally go away because of Brexit. I did an English literature degree. That in no way encouraged me to be a writer. I was, the things I've read, it was a very traditional course, UK English literature throughout the ages. I like lots of it. I only really started wanting to be a writer when I started reading foreign stuff, some in translation, some in French, and I'm not saying that this is all from Europe. A lot of it's not. A lot of it's part of this is due to the fact that most of what is translated into England is from Europe rather than from the wider world. And I am very excited by the fact that we're now getting translations from, for instance, Korea. There are quite a few Korean novelists coming through, and yes, their work is very exciting to me too.
But what is it about about international literature or translated literature that excites you?
A wider range of models, both of. It's difficult to say linguistically. linguistically, because the only other language I can actually appreciate words in is French, and my French is okay. I can read in it, but I'm not going to get all the nuances by any means. So although I do like I like bridging some of the gaps. I like the gaps and difference of meaning. That's very exciting for me as a writer, and it highlights things that are happening in English. That are
I love the way you bring different languages, bring the French into your writing in English.
Well,
as well.
I like that. It's not quite fair to say I write in French. I occasionally steal large chunks of French Wikipedia for some reason. I don't quite know why. I've done that a few times. So I can't pretend my influence only comes from European writers, except that those are the most commonly translated into English. But the differences in structure, the differences in technique, have excited me far more than most of the stuff that's available in the Anglo-American model of contemporary writing. Although, of course, there are many writers I enjoy from those countries too.
Now let's hear some literature as well. Let's weave it in because we've got 4 readings as well. And I want you to also hear the original language, I think, which will be great. And then we'll talk some more, and we'll have time at the end for some questions from you as well. But let's start with Antoine Laurain. And I just want to give a little bit of background about the novels you've written. You've written 6 novels, and 3 of them have been translated into English by Gallic Books, which we're delighted about. In fact, a couple of years ago, Antoine Laurain and I met at the European Literature Night, where he was one of the featured authors for a wonderful book called The President's Hat. And since then, he's written the Red Notebook, and then this one, which is called French Rhapsody. They are... When I wrote a review, these are flawless novels. They are absolutely beautiful, beautiful short novels. They are not just about French whimsy. They are about the state of France, French politics. They're about art and literature. And in this new one, you meet Patrick Modiano. So this is a very erudite but lightly worn erudition. It's absolutely beautiful writing and wonderfully translated by Jane Aitken. So would you be kind of tell us a little bit, just give us a short synopsis. Jane is kindly going to read the English, Antoine is going to read some French, and give a short synopsis of the novel, and then some reading.
The book is a story of a letter that was written in 1983, and it got lost in the post for 33 years. When the letter turns up, it's actually an offer of a meeting with Polydor for a band, an 80s band called the Holograms. So this letter, which has been lost in the post for 33 years, turns up, and it arrives in the home of Dr. Alain Massoulier. And when he receives it, it's like his whole life is sort of completely overturned, because had he received the letter when it was meant to arrive, he might well have been by now a very famous rock star. So he sets about finding the members of his band, the Holograms, who are all very scattered by now, all quite famous in their own way. One is a contemporary artist, one is a very right-wing, thuggish politician, one is a successful industrialist who is becoming, almost by chance, a politician. In fact, there's a chance that he might run to be president. And then there's a singer. So there's all these 5 people who Alain discovers. And anything else, Antoine?
Oh no, that's good. She's very good, my publisher.
So Antoine is going to read a bit about the contemporary artist. He is making an installation in the Tuileries Gardens.
Yes, that's it. Le titre, Stan Lepel, La consécration, s'étalait sur toute la page. L'œuvre était là pour interroger, était une des relances de l'article imprimé en gras. Lepel déclarait doctement que la place de l'art est de questionner le regard, et par là même les fondements moraux et idéologiques de toute société. Il ne s'agissait pas à ses yeux d'une structure gonflable de 25 mètres de haut et 60 de diamètre, reproduisant son propre cerveau d'après une maquette générée par une imprimante 3D ayant pour origine un scanner médical de cette partie de son individu, mais bien d'un point d'interrogation sémantique. Plus loin, il était arrivé à placer que Bubble devait dialoguer avec l'obélisque. C'était bien ça, il fallait toujours placer le mot « dialogue » dans un entretien lié à une installation d'art contemporain. Ça rendait l'œuvre sympathique. Qui voudrait s'attaquer à quelqu'un qui veut juste dialoguer? Personne. L'interview du Monde était la seule qu'il donnerait. Et demain, toute la presse en parlerait. Par son silence, il signifierait son mépris pour ses futurs détracteurs, tout en travaillant son caractère inaccessible. Il faut se faire rare, lui disait souvent son marchand. Mais le Pell n'avait pas besoin de ce crétin pour le savoir. Bubble ne laisserait personne indifférent. Quelques extrémistes allaient pousser des cris d'orfraie, les mêmes qui avaient dégonflé le plug anal de McCarthy ou vandalisé le dirty corner d'Anish Kapoor dans le château de Versailles. Mais Bubble n'avait pas de connotation sexuelle. Il leur couperait l'herbe sous le pied. Les extrémistes feraient assez de bruit pour assumer la promo, comme disait son galeriste, mais n'iraient pas jusqu'au vandalisme. D'ailleurs, la mairie avait alloué 2 vigiles qui effectueraient des rondes de nuit dans le parc, afin que, durant le mois de son installation, aucun plaisantin ne vienne le dégrader. Le Pell baissa le journal et leva les yeux vers l'œuvre qui prenait forme. Un cerveau géant, son propre cerveau, 60 mètres de diamètre sur 25 de haut, installé sur le bassin et rempli d'hélium, mais solidement ancré au sol. Le gaz faisait lui aussi partie de la symbolique de Bubble. Une possibilité d'envol contrée par son arrimage, une interrogation sur le désir et la raison, si vous préférez, avait-il répondu au journaliste. Lorsqu'il serait définitivement gonflé, le vacarme de la sonnerie s'arrêterait et il n'aurait plus qu'à tester l'ultime phase de l'œuvre. À minuit précise, la machinerie conçue par Matra Horlogerie et LED Éclairage illuminerait le cerveau et deviendrait rose et bleu. Le Pell se leva et fit quelques pas en arrière, afin de savourer seul dans cette nuit ce qui s'apparentait à son triomphe. Une petite ombre avait bougé au loin de la pelouse, puis une autre. Le Pell s'en approcha. Les 2 ombres s'étaient immobilisées, sans pour autant prendre la fuite. Des chats auraient déjà détalé dans un bosquet. Les 2 silhouettes, museau contre museau, paraissaient presque complotées dans le contre-jour des projecteurs. L'une d'elles se détacha dans la lumière, révélant des yeux rouges. Le Pell eut un soubresaut de recul. Des rats. Saloperie, murmura-t-il.
So this is the same bit, but in English. The headline across the top of the page read, "The Consecration of Stan Lepel." "The work is intended to pose questions," was one of the quotes in bold in the body of the article. Lepel stated crisply that the role of art is to question behaviour and the moral and ideological foundations of society. The 25-metre high, 60-metre wide inflatable structure, a reproduction of his brain from a model generated by a 3D printer based on a medical scan, was not merely an artefact. It was a semantic question mark. Further on in the article, he'd managed to get in the fact that Bubble must provide a dialogue with the obelisk. That was important. You always had to have the word dialogue in an interview about a contemporary art installation. It made the work seem appealing. Who would want to attack someone who just wanted to start a dialogue? No one. The interview with Le Monde was the only one he would be giving, and tomorrow all the press would talk about it. By his silence, he would communicate his scorn for future detractors, whilst also building his reputation as inaccessible. You have to make yourself appear unobtainable, his dealer was always telling him. Not that Lepel needed that cretin to point it out. Love it or hate it, no one would be indifferent to Bubble. There would be a hue and cry from some right-wing extremists, the ones who had unhooked McCarthy's butt plug from its air source, or vandalised Anish Kapoor's dirty corner at Château de Versailles. But Bubble had no sexual connotation, and that would make it harder for them. The extremists would make just enough fuss to publicise Bubble, his dealer said, but would stop short of vandalising it. And Lepel looked up from the newspaper at the work which was taking shape. The giant brain, his own brain, 60 metres across and 25 metres high, installed over the pond and filled with helium but solidly anchored to the ground. The gas was part of the symbolism of bubble. The possibility of flight countered by support cables, or, if you prefer, desire and reason in apposition, had been his explanation to the journalist. When the brain was fully inflated, the din of the blower would cease, and all that would remain to be done was the testing of the final phase of the installation. On the dot of midnight, the machinery, designed by Matra Horlogerie and LED lighting, would make the brain glow pink and blue. Lepel got up from the chair and took a few steps back to savour this night alone with his statement piece. A little shadow moved in the distance, then another. The two shadows froze without taking flight. Cats would already have scarpered into the bushes, but these two silhouettes, nose to nose, seemed almost to be plotting in the glare of the spotlights. One of them was picked out by the light, revealing its red eyes. Lepel recoiled in shock. "Rats! Shit," he murmured.
Lovely. Thank you so much to Jane and Antoine for that. And if we've got time at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about the books as well. But the one thing that is just so fantastic about Antoine's books, and he's really nailed the market in using inanimate objects as a device in each book. And we had the hat, we had Mitterrand's hat in the first book, and then we had the lady's handbag and the red notebook in the second. And this one we've got the letter, which arrives 33 years later. It's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Now we're going to stay a little bit with French, I think, and move on to Joanna, because part of what Joanna does is French-oriented, and she will explain exactly what she does in French and why you've been interested in France for so long. Just a little bit of background. Joanna's written four books, and I first met her when through the Best European Fiction anthology, which was edited by the wonderful Wes Camel, who is sitting over there. That was 2014, was it 2015? 2015. I've read them all. They all, I don't say they all meld into one, but Joanna writes the most precise, beautiful, stunning, elegant stories, and I am amazed that she's not known all over the world, and I hope that she will be one day, because it is really beautiful, beautiful writing. And she's sent me one yet unpublished short story to read, which is amazing. I hope somebody publishes that soon. And then another one which is not included in the book in your anthology, it's basically linked short stories, Vertigo, isn't it?
Yes. Thank you. I guess my engagement with the French language, as I said, is partly is mostly to look at the gaps and the distances between, which highlights the way that words work in English, and the way that also English words are different from each other. I'm just interested a lot in differences. This story is written entirely in English. I don't write much in French, really. Story from Vertigo called Fin de Collection, has a French title, which means it's that period at the end of the sales where you get all those kind of horrible clothes that are left that no one wants, and they look terrible together. And somehow they looked wonderful, 6 months ago when they were placed with other clothes that matched them in colour and in style. But when they were all put together on the same rack, they look appalling. Okay. A friend told me to buy a red dress in Paris because I am leaving my husband. The right teller can make any tale. The right dresser can make any dress. Listen to me carefully. I am not the right teller. Even to be static in Saint-Germain requires money. The white stone hotels charge so much a night just to stay still. So much is displayed in the windows, so little bought and sold. The women of the quarter are all over 40 and smell of new shoe leather. I walk the streets with them. It is impossible to see what kind of women could inhabit the dresses on display, but some do. Some must. We turn into Le Bon Marché, the women and I, Vogue heavy in our shoulder bags. Le Bon Marché is divided into departments: fashion, food, home. It is possible to find yourself in the wrong department, but nothing bad can happen here. Le Bon Marché is always the same and always different, like those postcards where the Eiffel Tower is shown 100 ways, in the sun, in fog, in sunsets, in snow. There are no postcards of the Eiffel Tower in the rain, but it does rain in Paris, even in August. And when it does, you can shelter in Le Bon Marché, running between the 2 ground floor sections with one of its large orange bags suspended over your head, too short a dash to open an umbrella. Fin de collection d'été. In Le Bon Marché, it is already autumn. In 35-degree heat, we bury our faces in wool and corduroy. We long for frost, we who have waited so long for summer. In the passerelle, the walkway between the store's 2 buildings, a tape loop breeze, the sound of water, photographs of a beach. Je peux vous aider? The salesgirl asks the fat woman with angel wings tattooed across her back. The woman mouths non and walks with her thin companion into the passerelle, suspended. The first effect of abroad is strangeness. It makes me strange to myself. I experience a transfer, a transparency. I do not look like these women. I want to project these women's looks onto mine, and with them all the history that has made these women look like themselves and not like me. There is something about my face in the mirrors that catch it. Even at a distance, it will never be right again, not even to a casual glance. Beauty. It's the upkeep that costs. That's what Balzac said, not the initial investment. From time to time, I change my mind and sell my clothes. I sell the striped ones and buy spotted ones. I sell the spotted ones and buy plaid. To change clothes is to take a plunge to holiday. The thin girl in her checked jacket looks more appropriate than I do, though her clothes are cheaper. This makes me angry. How did her look slip by me? I was always too young, and now I'm too old. I cannot forgive her. I forgive only the beauties of past eras, the pasty flappers, the pointed new lookers. They are no longer beautiful and cannot harm me. Even your other women seemed tame until I saw the attention you paid them. I no longer know the value of anything, and if you do not see me, I am nothing. From the outside, I look together. I forget I'm really no worse than anyone else, but how can I go on with nobody, and how and when and where can I be inflamed by your glance? I can't be friends with your friends. Can't go to dinner with you. Don't even want to. But why does the fat woman always travel with the thin woman? Why the one less beautiful with the one more beautiful? Why do there always have to be 2 women, one better than the other? Je peux vous aider? No. There are no red dresses in Le Bon Marché. It isn't the dress. It's the woman in the dress, said Chanel or Yves Saint Laurent. Parisians wear grey, summer and winter. They provide their own colour. Elegance is refusal. Chanel or Yves Saint Laurent or someone. To leave empty-handed is a triumph. In any case, come December, the first wisps of lace and chiffon will appear, and with them bottomless skies reflected blue in mirror swimming pools. To other people, perhaps, I still look fresh. To people who have not yet seen this dress, these shoes. But to myself, to you, I can never represent the glamour of a first glance. To appear for the first time is magnificent.
just wonderful. And there are, I can't remember how many stories there are in there, but they're each so different. And Vertigo, the title is explained in the story, which is called Vertigo. And these are exquisite stories, so do read them, buy the book afterwards. By the way, all the books are on sale, except Claudiu's book, which is actually for free. So this is, I know. It's an anthology provided thanks to the European Union Prize for Literature, which they award every single year. I think it's been going for about 6 or 7 years now. And basically what happens is that there are about 8, 9, 10, 11 winners each year. I think 12 winners this year. I think it changes 11, 10, 12, depending on the year, from 12 different countries. And what happens is they get a certain amount of money in order to have the book translated and published. And hopefully this will happen with Claudiu Florian's first novel, which we're going to hear a little bit of now, because this novel has a quite extraordinary story, which hopefully Claudiu will tell us about. But this is your first novel, but I know you've been thinking about it for a very long time. And you are very busy because you do also, I think you're the only one who has a real job here of all the right. No, actually, university. No, it's fine. And Joanna does a real job as well, I think. Don't you think you do? No, you don't. Okay, then Antoine just writes. So you've got a real job. Actually,
I dream of only writing myself.
Do you really? Yes. What you do is quite extraordinary. The fact that you with your family as well. I know that you spend a lot of time with your family and a lot of time with your job. When do you actually write?
Wow, this is the question I feared, because when I answer it now, it is hard for me even to believe in the truth and in the reality and the fact of the answer, because the first version of the novel in German, which I wrote between 2005 and 2008, I wrote to 99% in the metro. In the metro in Berlin.
The Straßenbahn.
Every morning and every evening. Towards the embassy and back from the embassy.
And how long is the trip?
There are 20 kilometers, 35 minutes with the S-Bahn.
35 minutes.
I am lucky that it is the S-Bahn and not the metro, because it is like a train and you do not get seasick when you are
And how did you do it? Sort of by hand or?
By hand, yes. I have here a sample. I mean,
have you got your notebook?
My agenda is here, and I keep writing. I hope to do it not only in the metro from now on, but in the past 8 years since the appearance of the German version, I only managed to translate it and to complete it into Romanian.
So you wrote it in German.
I wrote it
in the S-Bahn, in the Straßenbahn. Exactly. And how long did it take you to gather the material?
Well, the material is my mainly the own life, but written in a certain way, which kept a certain distance in order for everyone, at least of my generation, but not only of my generation, who lived through those times, to recognize some part of his own biography. So
this just to give you the picture. This started in 1973. The book, this book, this chronicle. It's a family chronicle, and you started in 1973.
It's the moment of the action taking place is in the mid-70s, 73, 75. 76 is actually the last year, but it is not that chronological. It is there are flashes which lead the reader towards certain aspects of mainly Romanian, but also European history. And the book is written from the first to the last page through the eyes of a child between 5 and 7 years old. But the clue of the whole writing is that the reader understands much more about the writing and about the story than the main character himself, the child, because the child reproduces and overtakes passively the dialogues between the adults, and gives them further to the reader, and the reader understands how it came to the installation of the communism in Romania, how it was with the participation of Romania to World War II against the Soviet Union, how it was with the first part of Ceausescu's time, and everything such.
I mean, the really fascinating part about this part of the world, which is it's near Brașov, which is where you come from, and you I think very proudly say you come from the smallest village or town in the whole of Romania.
Rupa in Transylvania, southeastern Transylvania.
Right. Well, and so it is about the linguistic and
it's about the
ethnic crossovers
and about the mentalities, different mentalities. The Romanian, the German, the Transylvanian Romanian, the Oltenian Romanian, the Wallachian Romanian, the Transylvanian Saxon, and the German. Taken over by the Saxons who emigrated after the war.
Fascinating. Now, we hope that there's just a small section we have in English, but the amazing thing is that you wrote it in German. So you didn't write it first in Romanian, you wrote it in German, then you translated it yourself into Romanian. And now it's being translated into English, but you have written a translation yourself into English of a small segment. So we're going to hear a bit of all of it. So this is a linguistic feast. You can buy the German, I think the German and the Romanian at the European bookshop, I think. Anyway, but unfortunately not here because it's not actually in English yet.
It's a scene for those who do not speak German. It's not obligatory here. It's a scene about a Christmas scene, a family scene where the two grandparents are sitting close to the Christmas tree. The grandmother being of German origin, Transylvanian Saxon, and the grandfather being of Romanian origin, and the child, the nephew, speaking both languages.
And Claudiu, we have to give the title of the book, which. Yes.
The German title is different from the Romanian. The original title is 2.5 Storks. The birds, the storks, a novel of a childhood in Transylvania. The symbol of it is not only that the storks are very often to be seen in Transylvania in their nests, but when you see in the spring, in the late spring, the storks having their little one grown up. You see them standing and the little one sitting. You think, optically speaking, that it's about 2.5 storks. But the idea of the novel is not only the optical one, almost not at all the optical one, but the difference between generations. And the reader is about to discover that it is not, there are not consecutive generations, but it is the generation of the grandparents with their history and the history they come from, and the generation of the nephew who discovers the world.
And the English translation is The Ages of the Game, Citadel Street.
Exactly, yeah. That's the Romanian and the English version. Alle mehrerlei, much of a kind. Alles ist mehrerlei. Die Menschen hier wie die Menschen woanders, die eine Sprache wie die andere, unsere Feier zu Hause wie die Feier im rotbraunen Fernseher. Es ist nicht alles eins, es ist alles zwei oder drei oder vier. Es ist Heiligabend und wir sitzen zu dritt vor dem bunt geschmückten Tannenbaum und singen. Doch singen tun wir nicht zu dritt, nur sitzen, denn die Sprache hilft uns nämlich nicht allen weiter. O Tannenbaum, ertönt unser kleines Ständchen von der Großmutter und von mir, wobei der Großvater nur dabei sitzt und leise summt. Er spricht die Sprache dieses Liedes nicht und rein vom Hören her wird er recht wenig mitbekommen vom Duzen des Nadelbäumchens und von dessen Blühen nicht nur zur Sommerzeit. Allein der Anblick wird ihn wohl feststellen lassen, dass auch im Winter, wenn es schneit, das grüne Gewächs vor unseren Augen in vollem Schmuck auflebt. Danach ist er es, den ich singend begleite. O brat frumos. Und es ist die Großmutter, die jetzt leise summt, obwohl sie die andere Sprache des gleichen Liedes versteht und auch spricht. Sie lässt aber den Großvater zu Lied kommen, sind sie doch so selten die Male, wo wir gemütlich zu dritt sitzen und ich jeden von ihnen begleite. Die Sprachen des Liedes trennen uns weitaus weniger, als uns die Melodie und der Anlass derselben vereint. Ich verstehe beide und weiß auch, dass sie das Gleiche erzählen in den beiden Sprachen, deren sich die Großmutter und der Großvater auch sonst jeweils bedienen in all dem, was sie zu sagen haben und die sich oft in schlichten Einzelheiten ergänzen. O brat frumos heißt auf Rumänisch O schöner Tannenbaum. So wie beim Mitsingen bin ich der Einzige, der mit den beiden mitreden kann in der jeweiligen Sprache. Das liegt daran, dass der Großvater die Sprache der Großmutter nicht spricht und letztere in der Sprache des Großvaters nicht singt. Denn die Großmutter und der Großvater sind selber mehrerlei.
It's beautiful in German. I speak fluent German, so that was lovely. Wonderful. It's very poetic in German too.
Thank you. The Romanian version, I will read the very short.
Is the Romanian version different?
It's not different, but it's more complete. It's more than a third larger. Longer, because I had much more time to finish and to overwork it and to finish.
It's his novel. He can do what he likes.
No.
And he's translating his own novel. So.
I was surprised that the German publishing house was so eager to publish it after in March 2008. I presented the manuscript at the Leipzig book fair, and they wanted to have it in October at the Frankfurt book fair.
Gosh.
And I had to finish it all very rapidly. But I had more time for the Romanian version. The Romanians are a little more relaxed and taking life more easy, and that's perhaps why the book came out a little bigger. So it's a scene about the end of the war in Vietnam. Tocmai în seara asta, când am crezut că acasă eu voi fi în centrul atenției. Și tocmai astăzi, bunica și bunicul par mai curioși ca oricând să afle ce s-a întâmplat. Când unul, când celălalt, trec dintr-o cameră într-alta și înapoi, schimbând când se întâlnesc vorbe puține și câte o exclamație scurtă. De mers, merg în seara asta amândouă, și radioul negru și televizorul brun roșcat. Fiecare spune altceva. Unul vorbește despre căderea Saigonului și războiul pierdut al americanilor, celălalt despre victoria armatei populare vietnameze și a comuniștilor în Vietnam. Nu știu cine e Saigonul, nici de ce și de unde a căzut, însă îmi dau seama că e important și că pe amândoi îi frământă căderea sa. Auzi acolo, face bunica, așa exclamă ea de fiecare dată în românește când o miră ceva foarte tare. Să ia bătaia americanii, să piarză războiul. Când a mai fost așa ceva? Așa ceva nu mai fost. Sunt dați dracului vietnamezii, domnule, spune și bunicul, în semn de maximă apreciere. Au știut ei să se bată în ani de zile în pădurile ale lor. Nu iartă. O să fie de acu și pe acolo ca la noi în 45. Vin comuniștii peste tot și s-a zis povestea.
Right. At least a quarter of the audience were laughing a lot at that. So a quarter of you are Romanian, I've worked out now in the audience. Excellent. So this is your own translation into English of the same passage.
And I want to ask for your understanding for perhaps not being in a very literary English language. If you British didn't bother 1,000 years ago to send some colonists to Eastern Europe, now I have two mother languages, but English being neither of them. So,
touché.
Yes. My measles got better, but our house gets worse. It's not good with the house, grandfather just said to grandmother. It's evening and he again returned later from downtown, but this time not being drunk at all. On the round table in the front room he got served a plate full of warm-up mashed potatoes. Today, those from the Popular Council sent a paper to Brasov, recommending for the state to take it over, grandfather says. What paper? The paper with the house. Grandfather is not furious, neither calm. He eats. The warmed-up potato pottage doesn't seem to fill him properly. He lowers the spoon and asks for bacon, bread, an onion, and some cheese. These did it for any case, and now it reaches us as well. After the decree from last year, where it says that the state takes all the goods which belong to people who left the country for good. Where do you know that from? From Suciu. Usually Suciu is just another Saufbruder, a drunkard brother. Now, all of a sudden, he is important, and grandmother doesn't say anything and does not wriggle her nose. You know he works at the registration office, and today he gave it a number and the paper has been sent. Now it only depends on those from Brasov how quick they react in order to release the decision. And the two of them look at each other for a couple of moments. And what about us? About us what? These want to take away our house and us to pay the rent in our own home. They don't miss anything that dogs. Adis Tarzan is small, but unpredictable, and the only one who keeps running freely on the street. Dr. Voikus Hector is bad and big. He keeps stalking all the time from his yard and makes you jump brusquely high up in the air when he shoots all of a sudden his savage bark with the muzzle stuck under the gate, revealing a yellow, terrifying fang. Except for them, there are not many dogs around. Not many to be seen, that is. The dogs stay all in the yards, behind tall gates, and bite every evening the darkness with their short, echoed bark. Ain't the yards enough for them anymore, since some of them started to throw an eye on the houses as well? Which dogs? I dare to ask grandfather. What? He looks at me almost surprised and suspicious. Then he shakes his head. Ticule, these are things that ain't for you. Run off to play. This he manages to say every time just about those very moments when I do not feel at all like playing. Sleep you shall, not play. Aber sofort, but all of a sudden. Grandmother always catches the right tone with me. Intimidated, I disappear next door in the middle room. But just when my steps seemed more resolute, I stop, turn on my heels, looking back through the half-open door, staying fixed, waiting. This I quote from the cat, and most of the time it works impeccable, cause many admonishes and commands, just thrown in a hurry, are forgotten as soon as the next minute. But things will not remain like this, grandfather says determinedly. They have to be prosecuted, together with the state. These will not succeed in getting us out of this house. Not us, not with all the papers in the world. Their mother's hallowed relics now and forever. Dear, do not swear here. People can hear us. The little one is a child. You bet. I'll send them to court. He stops and seems to think it over. For them to know who they are dealing with. Calm down, dear, grandmother says, appeasing. Let's better see what we can do. But what's their concern about us right now? We openly have owns papers. It's not only us they're concerned about. There are 60 houses in town on the list, all belonging to people who left for Germany after the war or who are about to leave. Grandmother's reaction is a little delayed. Finally, she asks, somehow hesitant and disbelieving, that Suciu fellow, hasn't he been drunk again? Now it's on grandfather not to say a thing. Silent, he only groans shortly and muffled, and you could almost think he is offended.
Thank you so much, Claudiu. I think you should definitely translate the whole of your novel into English. But it is going to be translated into English by Alistair Ian Blythe, I believe. Yes.
Just hear this for the first time now, but well, I'm happy about it.
There we are. That's fantastic news. Anyway, maybe we'll bring you back here just to launch your novel in English. Now, we are saving our most prolific, if you like, and for me, one of the writers I've followed over, say, 20 years almost, since I read Europa, which I absolutely loved. I love reading Tim Parks's articles. I love hearing him. Tim once says to me, let's go straight to it, but I actually do want to say this. And this is a slightly longer event than the usual events, possibly than you used to, but I do want to thank you for all you've done, also for translation. You're provocative, but you have done an awful lot for translation. You've written some wonderful articles about literary translation, either for it or against it. So thank you for all of that.
Against it.
Well, you've questioned it. You've been critical, which is good. I do like the fact that you're critical. What else is a critic for? Now, but also you're a wonderful novelist, and you have a new novel, which may be number 18. We're not sure. And you're going to read from this now. Tell us a little bit about it. And this is published by Harvel Secker.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you anything about it. There are connections with Italy, and you will not notice any of them at all because they're entirely disappeared in the text. You might amuse yourself wondering how certain aspects of it could be translated as you listen to it. It's just a little thing about a couple inside this larger novel, which is about a couple.
And could you give us the title? And
the title is Thomas and Mary, A Love Story. Mary was brilliant with names. She had so much fun with them. Coffee had a name. It was Fifi. And tea. It was Tiwi. That was in her younger days when her Scottish accent was stronger. But it was the names of pets, friends, and partners that most inspired Mary. Her flatmates, when Thomas first met her, Liz and Patty, were known respectively as Shuffle and Sharpie. Mary herself was Cane. One drunken evening, the girls had explained to Thomas how each of these names came to be, an intricate series of shifts and transformations that had seen Patty become Mama, then Shasha, then Shaman, and then one day after she had said something particularly unpleasant, Sharp, and finally, with a little more affection, Sharpie. Quite how Liz had become Shuffle, Thomas couldn't remember. Mary had been Mayhem, then Hurricane, then Cane. A hint of hurry and a hint of chastisement. Patty laughed, admitting that it was always Mary who thought up everything, and Mary in the end who decided which name stuck. Thomas also laughed, stroking a cat that had originally been Bilberry, and then Berry Boo, and then just Boo Boo. Boo Boo, Mary cried delightedly, rubbing faces with the fat black cat. Do you like our new friend, Tom? Thomas accepted this reference to his healthy appetite with good grace, but in no time at all, perhaps because stomachs do grumble, and sometimes couples argue, he had become Tom Tom. Grumble, and finally Grump. Grump yourself, Thomas told her, since Mary was famous for grousing. Big Grump and Little Grump, Mary elaborated, looking to patch things up. So now both of them had the same name. Then Grump became Gripe, and Gripe Pipe, and Pipe Pip. And for a while this neutral monosyllable stuck, and both were Pip. I love you, Pip. I love you, Pip. Until the evening someone on television said, you really get my goat. And later that evening, Mary said, I wish someone would get my goat. And towards midnight, and perhaps that was their happiest evening ever, Thomas and Mary were in bed calling each other goat. And they would be goat to each other now for 20 years and more. They wrote letters to each other beginning, Dear Goat. They started phone conversations saying, Hi, Goatie. In the filing cabinet under the stairs, there was a file entitled Big G and another entitled Little G. And when mobile phones arrived, each entered the other in the address book as Goat. Well, sometimes it was embarrassing. At some formal dinner party, Mary would say, You do the honors, Goat. Or, Goat, do you think you could go and check the potatoes? And Thomas would reply, No worries, Goat. Or if he was in a bad mood, Yes, Goat, no goat, 3 bags full goat. No goat, no go, Mary frowned. Then everybody laughed and wanted to know exactly how this goat thing had come about. And Mary would tell a different story on each occasion. Her favourite version was that goats, in the popular tradition, were supposed to calm the other farm animals down. "You've got my goat" actually meant you've taken away my calming influence. So being goats, Tom and I calm each other down. What nonsense. We wind each other up, Thomas protested. Nothing to do with sexual performance, one of the guests would always say. Alas, no, Thomas confessed. Later, the most fertile naming came with the children. Thomas was allowed his say, of course, for the registry office. Sally and Mark were the fruit of happy negotiation. Then Mary set to work on infinite permutations. Sally Alley, Miss Bowles, Laurie, Stardust. Mark, Muck, Cluck, Chuck, Chuckles. Here it was not so much a question of the music stopping with a name that worked better than the others. Rather, as the years passed, different members of the family came to have different names for each other, though all generated by Mary. So Thomas and Mary together called Mark Chuckles, but when Mary was with Sally, they called him Cluck. However, Thomas was soon aware that he was not supposed to call Mark Cluck, since this was the girl's name for him, likewise for Sally. Thomas and Mary called Sally Stardust, but Mary and Mark called her Laurie. In adolescence, the rebellions began. First, Sally wouldn't reply to any name but Sally. Both syllables, please. Mark allowed them to call him Chuckles right into his late teens, but he put an abrupt stop to it when he found a steady girlfriend. "It's over, Mum," he said one lunchtime. "Mark is my name, and Mark is what you call me. You're both so damn touchy." Mary shook her head. "Aren't they, Goat?" "They are indeed, Goat," Thomas replied, and realized as he spoke how he envied his children, who were being allowed to grow up and decide what they would be called. And already he foresaw the day when he would say to his wife, "I want you to stop calling me Goat, Mary. I can't deal with it anymore." "But it's so cute," she objected when that conversation finally happened. "It's us, isn't it? It's our story. We're Goat." The two of them were in the bed in the half-dark. It was our story, he accepted, and it was fun, but not now. When she was silent, he repeated, "Our goat days are over." They had the dog by then, of course, and Mary called him in the quiet of the bedroom that night, "Ricky, Ricky, love," and the dog patted over to her. "Kiki," she fondled his ears. "Yick, yick," she let him lick her mouth. "Will you call me Goat? For Christ's sake." "Meh," Mary muttered to the dog. Ricky pranced around, excited. "Mary, love, don't call me love," she said sharply. Moments passed. The dog whined. "Bleat," Mary said, her voice resigned. Very softly she began to cry. "Is it all right if I bleat a little from time to time?" "Damn." Thomas went downstairs to pour himself a whiskey.
Fabulous, thank you. Tim Parks, thank you. Wonderful writing. I really look forward to that. I haven't read that one yet, so it's only just come out, hasn't it? Have you got a nickname?
I don't want to talk about the story. You know, it's pretty clear what it's about. It's about two people who are... this whole business of naming people in groups is always fascinating, you know.
It's difficult to translate into, say...
Well, right. Yeah. And yet the couple I'm basing that particular game on were an Italian couple. So it's completely rethought in English. But obviously it's a huge translation problem because, you know, you're going to have to reinvent all that or just not bother translating it. Yeah, it's a typical translation nightmare.
Are you translated into Italian?
No, I write in Italian sometimes, but it's very unwise to translate yourself into another language with due respect to... It's just one never has the same
Well, my Italian is pretty good. I can write in Italian, but it's a different person. It's a different scope. The scope of my English is different, and it's better to leave it to. Then I'll go over it carefully, and there'll certainly be some discussions. But it's better if somebody else does it. Yeah.
So we unfortunately come to the end, but this has been a wonderful evening of readings. I'm sure you'll agree. I don't know whether we've solved the Brexit problem. I think we probably have just by having this evening. So let's have more of them. And it's a fantastic gathering.
Perhaps not wanting to be called GOAT is the Brexit moment. You know,
you heard it here
this
first.
name, you know.
There you are. He said it. So please do buy their books, and most of these are independent publishers as well, and translations. Not yours. No, yours is a big one, but they're very, very friendly towards all international literature, Havel Secker as well. So I want you to say thank you very much to Joanna Walsh. And thank you for the beautiful reading, Joanna, and to Tim Parks, and to Antoine Laurain, and to Claudiu Florian. And come and talk to them afterwards, buy the books, and they'll be signing here or wherever, I think. And thank you so much to all of you for coming.